I sat across from my mother at her favorite Italian restaurant, watching her dab the corner of her mouth with a linen napkin like she was performing for an invisible audience. She had just said the words that would change everything. Honestly, Sienna, we only set a place for you because your father felt guilty. Gratitude looks better on you than that dress, by the way. She said it with a smile. She always smiled when she cut deepest. I took a slow sip of my sparkling water, folded my napkin neatly beside my plate, and smiled right back. That evening, I sat in my home office, opened the architectural software I had designed for my father's entire real estate empire, and revoked every single access credential. Then I called my attorney about the warehouse. Before I tell you how we got here, hit subscribe if you have ever smiled through pain just to survive a family dinner. Drop a comment telling me where you are watching from. And if you have ever been the one holding everything together while being told you contribute nothing, this story is for you. I am Sienna, and I was 31 years old when I finally stopped being my family's invisible foundation. Growing up in Winnetka, Illinois, just north of Chicago on the pristine lakefront, meant everyone assumed my life was charmed. Our 6-bedroom Tudor revival home sat on 2 acres of manicured grounds. The kitchen had been featured in Architectural Digest when I was 9. My mother, Diane, had framed the magazine cover and hung it in the foyer, not because she was proud of the home, but because she was proud that people knew about it. My father, Gerald, built Aldrich Development Group from a single strip mall purchase in 1987 into one of the Midwest's most respected commercial real estate firms. By the time I entered high school, the company managed over 40 properties across Illinois, Wisconsin, and Indiana. Shopping plazas, office complexes, mixed-use developments. My father's name appeared on bronze plaques in lobbies throughout the greater Chicago area. My older sister, Natalie, was the family's golden child. 3 years my senior, she possessed my mother's cheekbones and my father's confidence without inheriting either parent's substance. She coasted through a communications degree at Northwestern, married a hedge fund manager named Bradley at 26, and settled into the role my mother had scripted for her since birth. The beautiful, well-connected daughter who validated every parenting choice Diane had ever made. Then there was me. Quiet Sienna, who preferred blueprints to brunch, who graduated summa cum laude from the Illinois Institute of Technology with a degree in architecture and a minor in structural engineering, who could read a building's bones the way some people read faces. My parents attended my graduation 45 minutes late because Natalie had a hair appointment that ran over. My father spent the ceremony answering emails. My mother told me afterward that my cap made my forehead look wide. I learned early that achievement without visibility meant nothing in our family. Natalie could post a photo of her latte art and receive 10 minutes of dinner conversation about her creativity. I could win a national design competition and hear, "That is nice, Sienna. Pass the bread." The dynamic crystallized when I was 14 and overheard my mother on the phone with her sister. Natalie is the one people notice when they walk into a room. Sienna is more of a background presence. Some children are meant to shine and some are meant to support. There is nothing wrong with that. I stood in the hallway outside the kitchen holding a math trophy I had planned to show her. I put it in my closet instead. It stayed there for 17 years. After college, I joined a mid-size architecture firm downtown, where my technical precision and creative problem-solving earned rapid promotion. By 27, I was leading commercial renovation projects worth millions. My specialty became adaptive reuse, transforming abandoned industrial buildings into modern functional spaces while preserving their structural heritage. I loved the work because it mirrored what I wished someone would do for me: look past the neglected exterior and recognize the value of what already existed. The irony of my family situation was that despite being dismissed as the background daughter, I had become essential to my father's business without any of us fully acknowledging it. It started when I was 23 and fresh out of college. My father's company was struggling with a problematic property, a former meatpacking warehouse on the southwest side that he had purchased cheaply but could not develop profitably. City zoning restrictions, structural concerns, and environmental remediation issues had stalled the project for 2 years. Over a single weekend, I reviewed the building plans and identified a structural solution that his contracted architects had missed. The existing steel framework could support a mixed-use conversion at a fraction of the estimated cost if you rerouted the load-bearing modifications through the original industrial columns rather than adding new supports. I sketched the concept on graph paper and left it on his desk Monday morning. He never thanked me, but the project moved forward using my exact specifications, eventually becoming a highly profitable food hall and office complex. After that, requests for my input became routine but never official. My father would casually mention a property over holiday dinners, describe a problem as though making conversation, then wait for me to solve it. I would email my analysis the next day. He would forward it to his team without attribution. I designed an entire property management software system for the company on my own time because their existing platform was a patchwork of incompatible databases and spreadsheets that no one could navigate. This system, which I built over 8 months of evenings and weekends, became the operational backbone of Aldrich Development Group. Every tenant lease, maintenance schedule, financial projection, and compliance document flowed through architecture I had created. The login credentials, the security protocols, the backup systems, all designed and administered by me. When I once mentioned this contribution at a family dinner, my mother laughed. Sienna and her little computer projects. She gets that from Gerald's side. The tinkering gene. My apartment in Logan Square reflected the person I was when no one from my family was watching. Exposed brick walls I had restored myself. A drafting table by the window where morning light fell perfectly. Bookshelves organized by subject, then author, then publication date. My cat, a gray tabby named Archimedes, would sit on completed blueprints as though approving them. My friends, Priya, Marcus, and Tomiko, formed the family I had chosen for myself. We gathered Friday evenings for takeout and honest conversation, for the kind of laughter that does not require performance, for the comfort of being known and valued without conditions. Yet I kept returning to my biological family. Every Sunday brunch my mother orchestrated at a different overpriced restaurant. Every holiday gathering where Natalie's husband Bradley would talk about market portfolios while my father nodded approvingly, and I would sit quietly calculating the structural load capacity of the ceiling above us, just to keep my mind occupied. I kept returning because somewhere beneath 31 years of evidence to the contrary, a small stubborn part of me believed that if I just did enough, achieved enough, contributed enough, they would finally look at me and see someone worth loving for who she was rather than what she could provide. The dinner invitation arrived on a Tuesday in October, a group text from my mother. Sunday at Rosalinda's, 6:30. Wear something appropriate. We have news. No greeting, no request. A summons. What my mother did not know was that I had recently discovered something troubling while performing routine maintenance on the property management system. Natalie's husband Bradley had been using his access to company financial projections, access my father had granted as a courtesy after the wedding, to make suspiciously timed investments. Over the past year, he had purchased stakes in 3 companies shortly before Aldrich Development announced major lease agreements with those same companies. The pattern was unmistakable to anyone with financial literacy. It looked like textbook insider trading. Additionally, I had discovered that my father was planning to demolish an old warehouse property on West Randolph Street that technically belonged to a trust my grandmother had established before her death. Grandma Estelle had purchased that warehouse in 1972, one of the first commercial properties a woman had bought independently in that neighborhood. Her trust specified that the building was to remain in the family specifically under my stewardship as the only grandchild who had pursued architecture. My father had apparently decided this provision was merely sentimental and had contracted a demolition company without informing me. I arrived at Rosalinda's precisely at 6:30. The restaurant gleamed with the kind of aggressive elegance my mother gravitated toward: gold-rimmed plates, crystal stemware, waiters who moved like they were choreographed. My family was already seated at a corner table that offered maximum visibility to other diners. My father wore his charcoal suit with the pocket square my mother selected each morning. Natalie had Bradley beside her, both of them glowing with the particular smugness of people about to make an announcement. My mother presided at the head of the table in cream silk, her blonde highlights immaculate, her smile precise as a scalpel. "You found something to wear," my mother observed as I sat down, her gaze traveling over my navy wrap dress with undisguised assessment. "I told you Rosalinda's is dressy. You look fine," Natalie added, which from her was not a compliment but a concession. My father glanced up from his phone. "Order quickly, we have a lot to discuss." The waiter appeared with the attentiveness reserved for tables where the bill would be substantial. My mother ordered Prosecco for the table without consulting anyone. I asked for sparkling water and coffee. She sighed as though I had requested something unreasonable. Small talk circulated like an hors d'oeuvre no one wanted but everyone sampled. Bradley mentioned a golf trip. My mother critiqued a neighbor's landscaping renovation. My father checked his phone between every sentence. Natalie showed photos from a spa weekend, waiting for compliments that arrived on cue from everyone except me. So, my father said after entrees arrived, setting down his phone in a gesture that signaled importance. Natalie and Bradley have news. Natalie reached for Bradley's hand with practiced grace. We are expecting, she announced, her smile radiant and rehearsed. Due in April. My mother gasped as though she had not already known, pressing her hand to her chest in a performance of surprise that deserved its own curtain call. A grandchild. Finally. She turned to me with the look she reserved for moments when comparison was the point. You see, Sienna, some things in life cannot be achieved through spreadsheets and blueprints. Congratulations, I said to Natalie, meaning it. Whatever my feelings about our dynamic, a child was welcome news. This changes things for the company as well, my father continued. Bradley will be taking a more active leadership role at Aldrich. Fresh perspective, family continuity. I felt something tighten in my chest. Bradley has a background in hedge fund management, not real estate development. He has vision, my mother said sharply, and family loyalty, which brings us to the other matter. She exchanged a look with my father, one of those parental telegraphs that excluded me even when I was sitting right there. We feel it is time to professionalize certain aspects of the business, my father said, not meeting my eyes. The property management systems, the financial tracking, the software infrastructure. We are bringing in an outside firm. You mean replacing the systems I built? I said evenly. Upgrading, Natalie corrected with a diplomatic smile that did not reach her eyes. Bradley knows a tech consulting group from his network. Very impressive credentials. Those systems manage 43 properties, I replied, keeping my voice level. The migration alone would take months and cost significantly more than maintaining the current architecture, which, incidentally, I maintain for free. And we appreciate that, my mother said in the tone that meant the conversation was being closed. But it is time for you to step back from business matters. Focus on your little buildings. Let the professionals handle the rest. The little buildings. My award-winning adaptive reuse projects that had been featured in 3 industry publications. My little buildings. Additionally, my father added, scrolling through his phone as though this were an afterthought, we are moving forward with the Randolph Street property. Demolition is scheduled for next month. Prime location for a luxury residential tower. Bradley's firm is handling the investment structure. That property is held in Grandma Estelle's trust, I said, my pulse steady despite the alarm bells ringing in my mind, with specific provisions about my involvement in any decisions regarding its future. Your grandmother was sentimental about old buildings, just like you, my mother said. The trust language is vague. Gerald's attorneys have reviewed it. It was not vague. I had read every word of that trust document multiple times. The language was precise, specific, and legally binding. But I did not say this. Not yet. The main course arrived, and conversation shifted to nursery colors and baby shower venues. I ate mechanically, listening to my family plan a future that systematically excluded me from every role I had built. And then, between the entree and dessert, as the waiter cleared plates and my mother requested the tiramisu menu, she turned to me with that smile, the one that preceded her cruelest observations. Honestly, Sienna, we only set a place for you because your father felt guilty. Gratitude looks better on you than that dress, by the way. She laughed lightly, as though she had said something charming. Natalie studied her napkin. Bradley smirked into his wineglass. My father said nothing, his silence an endorsement louder than words. The restaurant continued around us. Silverware clinked. Conversations hummed. A couple nearby leaned toward each other in whispered intimacy. Normal human warmth existing just beyond the radius of our table. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and for the first time in 31 years, I did not feel the desperate need to earn her approval. Instead, I felt something settle inside me, quiet and immovable, like a foundation finally finding bedrock. Thank you for dinner, I said, placing my napkin beside my plate. I have an early morning. I drove home through October darkness, Chicago's skyline glittering against the lake like a city made of cold stars. Archimedes met me at the door with his usual indifferent affection. I hung my coat, fed him, and sat at my drafting table in the dark for a long time. Then I cried. Not the polite tears my mother would have approved of, but deep, shuddering sobs that came from the foundation of who I was. 31 years of trying to be enough for people who had decided I was insufficient before I could even speak. Decades of building their infrastructure while they built narratives in which I barely appeared. After 20 minutes, the tears stopped, not because the pain ended, but because something harder and more purposeful took its place. I opened my laptop and began. First, I accessed the property management system and performed a comprehensive audit, documenting every account, every credential, every automated process. I cataloged the evidence of Bradley's suspicious investment timing, creating encrypted backups with dates, amounts, and correlating company announcements. Then I drafted a formal resignation from all unpaid administrative duties, detailing every system I had built, every problem I had solved, every hour I had contributed without compensation or acknowledgement. At 11:15, I revoked all external access credentials to the property management platform, not maliciously, but as the system administrator exercising documented security protocols that my father had approved 3 years earlier without reading. The protocols clearly stated that administrative access changes were at the sole discretion of the system architect during any transition period. At 11:45, I emailed my father's corporate attorney regarding the Randolph Street warehouse. I cited the specific trust provisions my grandmother had established, attached the relevant legal documents, copied the city's demolition permitting office, and retained my own counsel. My friend Priya's wife, Dana Chen, was a trust and estate attorney who had been waiting for me to make this call for years. At midnight, I sent one email to my family. I am resigning from all involvement with Aldrich Development Group's technology and property management systems effective immediately. Documentation for transition has been provided to the corporate office. Regarding the Randolph Street property, I have engaged legal counsel to ensure compliance with the Estelle Aldrich Trust provisions. I will be unavailable for direct communication while I focus on professional and personal priorities. Sienna. I closed my laptop, picked up Archimedes, and went to bed. For the first time in years, I fell asleep without rehearsing tomorrow's apologies. I woke before dawn feeling strangely lighter, as though I had set down luggage I had forgotten I was carrying. I made coffee, fed Archimedes, did 15 minutes of stretching, and checked my phone. 22 missed calls, 31 text messages, 14 voicemails. I ignored all of them and called Dana Chen's office at 8 sharp. Dana had already reviewed the trust documents I had sent the previous night. Your grandmother was remarkably thorough, she told me during our 9 o'clock meeting at her office in the Loop. The trust explicitly names you as architectural steward of the Randolph Street property. Any structural modifications, including demolition, require your written consent. Your father's attorneys either did not read this carefully or assumed you would not challenge them. What about the property management systems? I asked. You built them on your own time, without a work-for-hire agreement, without compensation, and the administrative protocols you established give you clear authority over access during transitions. You have done nothing wrong. The question is, what outcome you want? I had thought about this all morning. 3 things. Protection of my grandmother's property, complete separation from family business obligations, and documentation of Bradley's investment patterns in case I need protection from being implicated in whatever he has been doing. Dana nodded. All achievable. I will have preliminary filings ready by end of day. I spent the rest of the morning securing my personal life. New passwords on every account. Family members removed from emergency contacts. A conversation with my building's front desk about restricting visitor access. I withdrew cash from my personal savings as a precaution and opened a new account at a different bank than the one my family used. By noon, the voicemails had become increasingly aggressive. My father's voice carried the particular outrage of a man who had never been told no by someone he considered subordinate. This is completely unacceptable. Fix the systems immediately. You are jeopardizing active business operations with this tantrum. My mother texted, your behavior is embarrassing. Call me immediately. Followed 20 minutes later by, Natalie is upset. In her condition, stress is dangerous. I hope you are proud of yourself. Natalie sent a single message. Bradley cannot access the financial projections. This is really inconvenient, Sienna. I did not respond to any of them. Instead, I called my therapist, Dr. Alan Chen, and scheduled an emergency session. This represents a significant rupture, Dr. Chen observed after I recounted the weekend's events. But rupture from a toxic system is not the same as breakdown. How are you distinguishing between guilt and grief? The guilt is familiar, I said. It feels like a reflex, like I should already be apologizing and fixing things. The grief is newer. I think I am mourning the family I never actually had. That is an important distinction, he replied. The guilt is programmed. It was installed specifically to prevent what you are doing right now. The grief is real and deserves space. By the end of the first week, the consequences of my withdrawal had rippled through my family's carefully constructed world. Without the property management system running smoothly, tenant maintenance requests went unanswered. Automated billing cycles failed. 3 lease renewals that had been in process stalled because the digital documentation was inaccessible without my authentication. My father hired an IT consulting firm to rebuild access. They quoted 6 months and $350,000 to replicate what I had built for free. In the meantime, his staff resorted to paper files and phone calls, creating chaos in an operation that had run seamlessly for years because of infrastructure they had never valued. The Randolph Street demolition was halted by a cease and desist order Dana filed within 48 hours. City inspectors, alerted by our filings, discovered that the demolition permits had been obtained without proper environmental review given the building's industrial history. The project was frozen pending comprehensive assessment, costing my father's company significant delay penalties. Bradley's reaction was the most revealing. Without access to company financial projections, his conveniently timed investments ceased. I learned through Priya, who maintained social connections in Bradley's professional circles, that he had been questioned by his firm's compliance department about the pattern of his recent trades. Whether this would escalate to regulatory scrutiny remained to be seen, but the documentation I had compiled sat safely in Dana's secure files. Natalie called from a new number on day 10, catching me off guard. "You need to stop this," she said without preamble. "Dad is furious. Mom is not sleeping. And Bradley's work situation is becoming complicated." Bradley's work situation was complicated before I did anything. I replied calmly. "I just stopped providing the cover." "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means you should ask your husband about his investment timing relative to Dad's business announcements." A long silence. Then, "You are jealous. You have always been jealous. I am an architect who was treated as unpaid IT support for a decade, while being told I contributed nothing. Jealousy is not the word." She hung up. I set my phone on the drafting table and scratched Archimedes behind his ears. He purred without judgment. The second month brought a shift from aggression to strategy. My mother, recognizing that direct confrontation was not working, began what I came to think of as her reputation campaign. Through carefully placed comments at social gatherings and charity events, she constructed a narrative in which I was experiencing a mental health crisis. "We are giving Sienna space during this difficult period," she told mutual acquaintances with practiced concern. "The pressures of her work have been overwhelming. We just want her to get the help she needs." This reframing served dual purposes. It explained my absence from family functions and preemptively discredited anything I might say about the true situation. It was masterful, and it might have worked if I had not spent years building genuine relationships outside my family. Marcus, who worked in commercial real estate himself, heard the rumors and called me immediately. "Your mother told Janet Caldwell that you had a breakdown and are on medical leave. Just wanted you to know what is circulating." "I am sitting in my office designing a brewery conversion in Pilsen," I replied. "Does that sound like medical leave?" "It sounds like your mother. Do you need anything?" "Just the truth out there. And maybe Thai food tonight." My professional life, freed from the constant interruptions of family demands, entered a period of remarkable productivity. Without weekend calls from my father about property issues, without my mother's Sunday brunches consuming every week's emotional reserves, without the background radiation of never being enough, I completed projects ahead of schedule. I accepted a speaking invitation at a national architecture conference. My brewery conversion design won a regional preservation award. 3 months after the dinner, my father made his first attempt at negotiation through official channels. His attorney contacted Dana with what they characterized as a generous offer. I would restore the property management systems and withdraw my objections to the Randolph Street demolition. In exchange, my family would compensate me retroactively for my administrative work with a one-time payment of $50,000 and include me in future family decisions. Dana relayed the offer with barely concealed amusement. $50,000 for a system their consultants quoted $350,000 to rebuild, plus years of unpaid labor, and the inclusion promise has no enforcement mechanism. "Decline," I said without hesitation. "Already drafted." The fourth month brought the first crack in the family facade. Bradley and Natalie's marriage showed visible strain under financial scrutiny. Without the convenient income stream of suspiciously timed investments, Bradley's actual portfolio performance was revealed as mediocre. His promised leadership role at Aldrich Development had produced nothing except expensive consultant dinners and a revised company logo no one had requested. Natalie, 7 months pregnant and unable to maintain the fiction that everything was fine, showed up at my apartment building one evening. The doorman called up, and against my better judgment, I agreed to see her. She arrived looking exhausted beneath her pregnancy glow, designer maternity clothes slightly wrinkled, which for Natalie was the equivalent of falling apart. "I am not here to yell at you," she said immediately upon entering, glancing around my apartment with the surprised expression of someone encountering tastes they had not expected. "This is actually nice. Thank you. Sit down. Do you want water?" She sat heavily on my sofa, and for the first time in my adult memory, my sister looked genuinely uncertain. Bradley's firm put him on administrative review. Something about trading patterns. He says it is routine, but I found documents he was hiding. I said nothing, letting the silence do its work. "Did you know?" she asked quietly. "I noticed irregularities in his access to Dad's financial data months ago. I documented them to protect myself, not to use against anyone. Why did you not tell us? When have any of you listened to something I said that was not about fixing a problem for you?" She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. The honesty of the question had landed somewhere she could not deflect from. We sat in silence for a full minute before she spoke again. "Mom told everyone you had a breakdown." "I know. You seem like the most together person I have talked to in months." "I am," I said. "For the first time, I actually am." She left after 30 minutes without asking me to restore anything or fix anything. At the door, she paused. "I am sorry about what Mom said at dinner, the guilt thing. It was cruel." "It was honest," I replied. "And honestly, it was the most useful thing she has ever said to me." 5 months in, my father appeared at my office. My assistant, briefed on the family situation, offered to turn him away, but I decided to face this directly. He entered my workspace and looked around at the drafting tables, the architectural models, the awards on the shelf. His expression carried something I had never seen from him before, the discomfort of a man confronting evidence that contradicts his narrative. "You have done well here," he said. The closest he had ever come to acknowledging my professional achievements. "I have. The business is struggling without your systems. The consultants are incompetent. We have lost 2 tenants due to maintenance failures. That is unfortunate." He sat down uninvited in my client chair. "What will it take to fix this?" "Define fix. Come back. Restore the systems. We will compensate you properly this time. A consulting fee. Equity stake. Whatever you want." "I do not want to come back," I said. "I want the Randolph Street warehouse preserved under the terms of Grandma Estelle's trust, with me as architectural steward as she specified. I want formal, legally binding acknowledgement that the property management systems are my intellectual property. And I want a written letter from you acknowledging my contributions to Aldrich Development over the past decade." His jaw tightened. "A letter, an acknowledgement, specific and honest, not for publication, for me." This request clearly confused him more than the legal demands. Acknowledgement cost nothing but required something he had spent my entire life withholding, recognition that I mattered. "I will consider your terms," he said, standing. At the door, he paused. "Your mother is not going to change." "I know," I said, "but I have." 6 months after the dinner at Rosalinda's, Dana finalized a comprehensive legal agreement. The Randolph Street warehouse would be preserved and renovated under my architectural direction, funded by the trust. My intellectual property rights over the property management systems were formally documented. Aldrich Development would license the systems from me at fair market rate, with a professional IT firm handling day-to-day operations under my technical oversight. My father signed everything. The acknowledgement letter arrived a week later. It was stiff, formal, and clearly painful for him to write, but it was specific. It named projects. It cited contributions. It admitted that my work had been essential. I read it once, filed it in my desk drawer, and did not need to read it again. The knowing was enough. My mother remained my mother. At a charity gala where we inevitably crossed paths, she approached me with champagne in hand and her public smile firmly in place. "People are asking about you," she said. This estrangement is awkward for everyone. It is not estrangement, I replied. It is a boundary. Same thing. Not even close. She studied me with an expression I could not fully read. Frustration, certainly, but perhaps beneath it, the faintest recognition that the daughter she had underestimated had become someone she could not dismiss. You were always the difficult one, she said finally. No, I replied. I was always the clear one. You just preferred confusion because it was easier to control. I walked away before she could respond. Not in anger, but in the settled calm of someone who has finally stopped arguing with a locked door and found an open window instead. Natalie and I built something cautiously new after Bradley moved out. She called it separation. I suspected it would become divorce once the baby arrived, and the full scope of his financial decisions became clear. We met for coffee every other week, careful conversations where we practiced being sisters without the distorting gravity of our parents between us. I used to think you were cold, she admitted one afternoon, her daughter sleeping in a carrier beside our table. Now I think you were just protecting yourself the only way you knew how. And I used to think you were shallow, I said. Now I think you were performing the role they wrote for you, same as I was performing mine. She smiled. It was the first genuine smile I could remember receiving from my sister in over a decade. A year after that dinner, I stood inside the Randolph Street warehouse, hard hat on, blueprints spread across a makeshift table. The renovation was underway. The building's original steel trusses, the ones my grandmother had fallen in love with in 1972, soared above me like the ribs of something ancient and enduring. I was converting the space into a community architecture studio, a place where young designers from underserved neighborhoods could learn and create. Grandma Estelle would have loved it. Archimedes could not visit the construction site, but I had taped a photo of him to my hard hat for moral support. My phone buzzed. A text from Natalie. A photo of baby Margot in a tiny onesie printed with blueprints that Natalie had custom ordered. Auntie Sienna's future apprentice, the caption read. I saved the photo and looked up at the steel trusses above me. My grandmother had seen value in this building when everyone else saw industrial waste. She had seen potential in me when the rest of my family saw background noise. The trust she created was not just about a warehouse. It was about trusting me to become someone worth trusting. My mother's words at that dinner had been meant to diminish me. We only set a place for you because your father felt guilty, but guilt was her currency, not mine. She had handed me the key to my own liberation disguised as an insult, and I had used it to unlock every door she had spent my lifetime closing. The future was not perfectly resolved. My father and I maintained a cautious professional relationship, respectful but boundaried. My mother continued to narrate a version of events in which she was the wounded party, and I had learned to let that story exist without needing to correct it. Natalie and I were learning each other as adults for the first time, discovering that sisterhood without parental interference was simpler and warmer than either of us had expected. Healing was not linear. Some Tuesday afternoons, the grief still arrived uninvited. Some holidays, the absence of the family, I wished I had ached like a phantom limb. Dr. Chen reminded me that this was not failure but evidence of a heart still capable of wanting connection, which was itself a kind of strength. But standing in my grandmother's warehouse, watching steel and light and possibility converge, I knew something essential had changed. I was no longer building foundations for people who refused to acknowledge the ground they stood on. I was building for myself, and for anyone who had ever been told they were only included out of pity. Pity is a small word for a small emotion. It shrinks both the giver and the receiver. What I had found on the other side of my family's cruelty was something pity could never produce. The unshakable knowledge that my worth was not determined by the people who failed to see it, but by the life I chose to build once I stopped asking for their approval. Have you ever been the one holding everything together while being told you were not needed? Have you set a boundary that felt like breaking apart before it felt like freedom? Tell me your story in the comments. Subscribe if this resonated with you. And remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can build is a life that no longer needs anyone else's permission to exist.